Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux here with Mike Beer from the Daily Racing Form. Going to look at some Breeders' Cup races, and specifically Friday. All the young horses are in the spotlight at Santa Anita on Future Stars Friday, and a lovely pick 5 sequence, Mike, that's going to incorporate all of those Breeders' Cup races. And just overall, your thoughts in general. Tough sequence, easy sequence? What are you thinking?
I thought pretty tough, mostly because, two-year-old racing's changed so much, actually, right? I mean, these horses don't race as often as they used to. And so it's not that surprising when horses sort of jump up out of nowhere and run a big race. So I'm always a little concerned about that. You also, of course, have the Euro shippers in the mix. So I thought it was pretty tough. But, we'll see if hopefully we get some prices in there and maybe beat some of these favorites along the way.
We'll see. It's going to kick off with race number 5 at Santa Anita on Friday, which is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. We'll take a look at that field top to bottom. Really big field, 12 here in the main body with a handful of also eligibles. And Mike, some of the big names in here, more locally based, Crimson Advocate and No Name Mets. What a year for George Weaver in terms of his 2-year-olds. But I think looking at the morning line favorite, the number 4, Big Evs, this field is pretty deep top to bottom.
I thought it was too, and I think just to add, a little complexity to it, each of the horses drawn to the 4 inside posts, and that includes the Europeans, Tiger Bell and Big Ebs. They're all speed horses, actually. So, I just wonder what's going to happen early in this race. If those 2 Europeans, the 3 and the 4, get out of the gate and bring their speed over here, this pace could get pretty fast. Maybe that works against Crimson Advocate breaking from the rail, but man, I think she's looked pretty good so far, and I kind of wanted to side with her a little bit in this race. Her turf debut was a really strong effort. They shipped her over to Ascot, and she ran really big over there as well. I think she's a really good horse. She's just going to need to get the right trip in here.
Yeah, you mentioned that turf debut. We'll take a look at that race back in May at Gulfstream Park, the Royal Palm Juvenile Fillies. A little bit of a new series where these horses were able to then go to Ascot. And looking at this performance, she was sensational. The way that she's going to open up on this field, she was not favored in this race. Obviously, Wesley Ward brought some horses over, but the way that she opens up here, Mike, pretty impressive for just her second career start. She ended up getting an 88 Beyer speed figure.
Yeah, exactly. An 88 Beyer for a 2-year-old filly in May. I mean, that's really good stuff. You don't see it that often. And then, of course, she backed it up with the big win when they shipped her overseas. A race where, listen, she just held on at the end of that race and caught a lucky bob, but she did all the hard work in that race to get the job done. I think she's really good. Again, we'll see how fast this pace gets, I guess.
And we'll see with her. I mean, obviously, these are 2-year-olds. They're developing. We haven't seen her in quite some time, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when horses ship like that. Now, looking at some others in here, I want to show another replay for the 11 Slider. Just hearing the connections the last couple of days, I wonder with some of these horses having to run locally at Santa Anita, is that a little bit of a difference maker? And the way that Slider is able to handle the turf here in that first turf start, I thought was pretty game here throughout the stretch run. He's going to get the job done over Dark Vintage and April Vintage, a horse that he'll have to face once again in this spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. He really handled the turf well here. And I think wins actually maybe even easier than the margin suggests, if only because she kind of blew that final turn there and really could have lost her best chance there. But she was able to re-rally, get the job done. She obviously handles turf. You're absolutely right that she could have a little bit of a home field advantage here as well. She was talented on dirt. She's talented on turf. Another horse, though, who has a lot of speed and probably wants to be forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You pointed out the speed towards the inside. It might actually in some ways help some of the horses towards the outer side in terms of getting a good position. But morning line favorite, just touching upon this one really quick, the 4 Big Evs coming off a really nice win last time out. I think the big question with some of the Euros, and it's going to be the common theme throughout the 2 days of racing at Santa Anita, is the ground. We're talking about California. We're talking about likely firm ground. A lot of these horses, some of their best races have been with some moisture in the turf.
Yeah, that's true. You always have to take that into account. As far as Big Evs goes, I mean, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from her. She is a speed horse over there. We'll see if it translates to North America. Generally speaking, just because she's so fast, I have a feeling that she might really appreciate firm ground here. If she gets out of the gate, I guess she's a player. I don't know that I'd be thrilled to take her as the favorite in this race, but I won't be surprised when she runs well.
Absolutely agree with you. It'll be interesting to see how the tote action is on race number 5 that kicks off the sequence. We'll move to the second leg, though. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, 1 1/16 on the main track. And the big name here, no shock, Mike, 7 Tamra, 4 to 5 on the morning line. Let's just jump right into her last effort, her replay. She went from a maiden special weight event to the grade 1 Del Mar debutante. And when we take a look at her replay here, This is everything that you'd want to see and probably more. She makes things look really easy here.
Yeah, it comes back a fast race too, and she just, absolutely buries this field right on the front end. I mean, there's nothing to really pick apart about this horse so far. She was really good winning her debut after not breaking that great. She broke way better in this race and smashes the field in fast time. She obviously has the big pedigree to go on as well. I mean, she looks really good from a lot of different angles. I wonder if it's a drawback maybe, and I don't want to get too far into this, but just the fact that Mandela elected not to get her a 2-turn prep on the way to the Breeders' Cup, if that's a bad sign or not. Probably not. She's way the horse to be in here.
Yeah, and you start to look at the others in here, and obviously there is an edge maybe going around 2 turns and having a race under the belt. And we'll jump into one of our other replays. That'd be the horse on the rail, the one Candy, coming out a really nice win in the Grade 1 Alcibiades at Keeneland. I mean, I agree with you in the fact if you're trying to go against Tamara, maybe that is the thing that's wrong, right? And you're trying to go against her is not having a race like this. But Candied won from 6 furlongs at Saratoga, a winner in a maiden special weight event, and really has what it takes here to get the mile and a 16th in just that second career start.
Yeah, I agree. I thought she was really impressive winning her first time out sprinting, and she was obviously really good in that race too. Didn't change leads through this stretch. I don't know how big a deal that really is. Maybe it'll come back to haunt her a little bit against some better horses, but I can't really knock her. She got a great draw towards the inside too, so there could be a really good trip coming for her. I wasn't way against her. I don't know that I would take her as the second choice necessarily. I was actually interested in a couple of horses drawn outside, the 11 and the 12. The post positions really work against these horses shipping in from New York, but they both appear to have a good amount of ability. And I just felt like maybe both of them could take a pretty big step forward here if they can get the right trip.
Yeah, both Life Talk and Just FYI exit the Grade 1 for Zed at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet. Sloppy track that day, but when you look at the 2 performances, I think the interesting thing about these fillies, Mike, is they like to be somewhat forward, but they're not necessarily need the lead types. They want to be a couple of lengths off of it, and I think going a mile and a 16th in terms of position, that's really never a bad thing. The winner ended up being Just FYI, who really made things look quite easy in the end.
Yeah, exactly. You make a good point, though, that they both could, even though they're drawn outside with their running styles, maybe they're tactical enough to land the right trip as long as they don't get hung out too wide in this race. I thought Just FYI was really impressive winning that Frizette. She handled the wet track fine. She has a pedigree that suggests longer is going to be fine with her as well if she can get a trip. I just felt like as far as Life Talk goes, she's going to be a big price in here. I still think she's sort of learning on the job a little bit, but the talent appears to be there. I didn't love the trip that she pulled in that Frizette down towards the inside and behind horses for a long way. So I'm willing to, sort of give her the benefit of the doubt for that when I liked her maiden win at Saratoga.
You mentioned Life Talk, 20-1 on the morning line. Todd Pletcher, Red Ortiz Jr. booked a ride. Typically not odds, we'll see with these ones, but I agree. I do think the trip last time out might have compromised her a little bit. Now, looking at the middle leg of the sequence, race number 7 is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. A really big field here, 14 in the main body with those 2 eligibles towards the outside. And this is a race that I'm really curious to get your thoughts on, Mike. To me, it was really hard to get a good grip on it. I felt like it was a race where you could easily spread.
Yeah, you really could. I'm glad that you looked at it the same way because I wasn't sure really what to do in here. I ultimately, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, Ashley, I ultimately sided with the Europeans in this race. And so I guess we'll just see how well this all works out. I didn't love the North American based horses in this race. We'll see how good they ultimately turned out to be. I would like the horse that I'm most interested in is the number 14, the French import, Le Pavot, who I happen to think could be a really good horse. Obviously, she could be compromised by this draw.
Yeah, post 14, not ideal, but is a Group 2 winner, 2 back in France. And then more recently, Longshot. We know how big their weekend was in the beginning of October, and she ended up finishing in 3rd in a Group 1 event. I was a little bit of, I guess, on the fence with some of the Euros in here. I thought out of the Euros, the 6, Porta Fortuna, this was the horse that caught my eye with that Group 1 win last time out, though albeit it was over soft going. Ossie Murphy riding this one. I just like what I have seen in a couple of those efforts, especially the last 3 to be more specific. But we'll take a look at a couple of replays here for the horses based in North America. And I'll start with the number 3, Buku, who, what a filly when you see the way that she's been able to just kind of turn the light bulb on, sit switching to the grass. This is in the Grade 2 Jessamine. at Keeneland back in early October. And I think looking at the pace was decent enough for her to make that late run, especially that early opening quarter. But the way that she's just going to kind of destroy this field in the end, I thought was visually quite impressive.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. She was a tough call for me in here because I really do like her last two races in particular. They're both dominant wins from well off the pace, and maybe she gets a set up here. Listen, I wanted to wait and see what kind of price she would be in here. I do think she'll probably wind up being, pretty fair come post time as far as price goes. I didn't love the field that she beat last time. I do like the way that she did it though.
Yeah, and it's tough. When you see grade two, you always think it's necessarily deep waters. But I think as we go through some other races, both on Friday and Saturday, that's not necessarily true. It just depends who showed up that day and, who entered in those spots. But I just think the way that she's been able to win, especially that one from so far back, was impressive. But again, she did get help in terms of the setup. Now, turf, Chad Brown, things that go well together, as we've always seen. I want to take a look at Hard to Justify's most recent outing. I thought this was a pretty good effort in the Miss Grillo. In terms of trip, though, when you look at where she's going to be placed early on, she was forward, and she did have to grind it out here, though. But Flavian Pratt was just kind of confident in her and gets the job done in here by just half a length. I think in terms of trip, she doesn't need to be forwardly placed, but this was nice to see from her.
That's a great point that you make there. She did have a good post in this race, and she did. Ultimately, she got a perfect trip to win here. But I'm with you. I like the way that she put away that long shot and sort of got clear at the end of that race. It was a good performance, and it's also just worth pointing out her debut. She won by a narrow margin. It wasn't a fast race. She overcame a ton of trouble in that race to get the job done. It's an effort that's way better than it looks. And she obviously improved a lot last time.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, right, it's 59 Beyer. That's not going to dazzle you, but I like that you pointed out the terms of the trip that she got. The pace was very, very slow, especially that opening half. So this is a race that I really think it is tough because you can start to look at other horses in here and maybe dissect it a little bit more. And I know we'll look at our tickets a little bit later, but I'm glad that we both decided this is kind of a race where you might have to spread. Now, we'll move on to the next race, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, mile and a 16th, 2-year-old boys in the spotlight. And a field of 11, we see a little bit of everything. Obviously, Bob Baffert with 2 live shots in here, Prince of Monaco and Muth, but also Todd Pletcher locked in here. And kind of looking at this group overall, is there anyone that stood out to you drastically in here, Mike?
I don't want to say drastically. It feels like there are some really, really talented colts in here. So I didn't necessarily want to give anyone short shrift. I happen to have been really taken by all 3 starts from the number 6 locked so far. And I sort of looked at him as the horse to beat in this race. And even as I say that, I realize that there are a bunch of other horses in here who may be just as good as he is.
Yeah, you mentioned Locked. The Locked and the Wine Steward met last time out in the Grade 1 Claiborne Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland back on the 7th. And these two are going to slug it out in the end here. Locke's going to get the job done, though, by a half a length. And I think they both raced very well. You've mentioned Locked has been pretty impressive in all 3 starts so far. Some big numbers, even one in defeat on debut. And I think even looking at the Wine Steward, this is a New York bred who really got tested for class last time out and really showed up and was able to improve from a buyer's perspective.
I would say he passed the class test for sure. I would just point out that maybe the difference in that race probably came down to trips in there because the Wine Steward got a really good one. He never left the rail. He got through on the inside. He made a real race of it. In the meantime, Locked was wide on the first turn. He was wide up the backstretch. He was wide on the second turn, and he still outfinished him at the end. I think he ultimately maybe ran a lot better than the Wine Steward did, but I don't want to knock the Wine Steward either because he's run well in all of his starts.
And looking at the others in here, I mentioned Bob Baffert has 2 Prince of Monaco, Muth. They finally were separated last time out. And I think the big thing is they were both stretching out. We're going to look at Muth's performance. I wanted to key in on this just from a distance perspective. Had to go a mile and a 6th finally after going 5 furlongs and 6 furlongs. And not sure necessarily what he faced in the Grade 1 American Pharaoh, but the way he's able to handle the additional distance, to me, he looks pretty reserved and pretty easy here, even when called upon.
Yeah, you're very right about that, and it's probably a good sign that he's the one that Baffert got the 2-turn prep into leading up to this race because he didn't do that with Prince of Monaco. Even though Prince of Monaco handled Muth pretty easily when they met in the best pale sprinting, and that was a very fast race. But it was Muth. They paid a lot of money for him. They got him stretched out in the Grade 1. He got a perfect trip in that race, but you just saw the replay. He also really ran in there.
Yeah, and they're both 4-1 on the morning line. I'm really curious, even when we start to just, talk about these races individually, and start to handicapping them from that perspective, what these horses on race day will go off at. Because you're right, Prince of Monaco dusted Muth, but obviously it was at a one-turn distance. And I think Muth having that two-turn race under his belt, I completely agree. I do think that gives him an edge in some sense. Timberlake was impressive in the Champagne. Looking at that effort, General Partner will have to face again. Fierceness was very disappointing as the heavy favorite there, and the connection seemed to really not have any idea what went wrong. But I think overall, the juvenile, in terms of the division of these 2-year-old colts, to me, it's still pretty wide open. There haven't really been standouts at this point.
I'm going to agree with you. I really feel like there's a chance that Fierceness could rebound in here. We'll see if he's able to do it. His debut was certainly good enough to make him a contender. I wanted to just ask you real quick before we move on. Ashley, do you have an opinion either way on Timberlake at 4-1 in this race? He's looked really good at times. A nice win in the Champagne last time. They're going to stretch him out around 2 turns for the first time here. Do you think that's going to be an issue for him?
I like him. Obviously, I'm a little biased because I did like him in the Champagne as well, and ended up getting the lucky side of it where he was able to be much the best there. But, looking at his performance, draw a line through the debut, I don't think 5.5 at Ellis suited him at all, and he wasn't sharp out of the gate. And since then, I like that in his last 2, the big thing is he's been close, but not on the lead. That's always something I just generally like in horses. And I thought last time out, he ended up being much the best. Was it because horses such as Fierceness didn't fire their best shot on that day? I don't know. I don't necessarily love 4-1 on him in this spot, because I do think maybe Bob Baffert's horses will take a little bit of play. Fierceness maybe will take some respect, just knowing how the connections were very confident going into the Champagne and disappointed. But I would hope to get a little bit better of a price on him, but I'm not sure that happens when you start to look at his buyer last time out and his race in general in 93. That puts him pretty high up here, even with horses such as Locked, who I know you have some interest in.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, we'll see how this. You're going to have to wait as far as single race wagering goes. You just want to wait and see how they bet this thing, because you could certainly wind up with some horses who wind up maybe taking what you would think is too much money, and maybe want to look at a different direction. That stuff doesn't really matter as much when we're talking about these pick fives, but from a straight up win wagering and a field like this one, I don't think you want to go too short on anybody.
Exactly. We'll move on to the final leg now. Race number 9, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, a mile on the grass. And this is a race where obviously the Euros have come in, and they've certainly shipped some very nice horses over. And, some of the local horses that have been based out in California are coming off some big wins as well. I gravitated personally towards a couple of the Euros in here. Mike, what was kind of your strategy to tackling this race in terms of the pick 5?
Sounds like we looked at it kind of the same way here. I sort of gravitated to the Euros as well. And in particular, I gravitated to the 2 Aidan O'Brien horses in this race. The 2 River Tiber just kind of seems like the horse to beat to me. I think he's going to be fine stretching out. I like his handy running style. He's got an inside post. Just thought there was a lot to like about him, but I'm also very interested in O'Brien's other horse, the 12 Mountain Bear, who I think maybe benefited from a change of tactics in his most recent start. I know it was a different surface, but they finally took this horse back and let him make one run from off the pace. And he put in a really big finish that day. I wonder if he can replicate it here stretching out.
He certainly did. He actually ended up being much the best in that last outing. As you mentioned, it was on a synthetic surface. And it's funny, we agree on River Tiber as the Aidan O'Brien runner that we both like. I actually like the other one in here as well, the 8 Unquestionable. Frankie Dettori teaming up with Aidan O'Brien. I thought the performance last out on October 1st at Longchamp was pretty impressive just to be the runner up in there. And I think all in all, it was an effort that I was willing to see this one now come stateside and see what this one can do. But still a couple of horses locally based, or at least based in North America. And we'll take a look at a replay here for a horse that's 5-1 on the morning line, the number 9, Endlessly, who, if you want to talk about the resume, really hasn't done anything wrong yet. 3 for 3 in the career for trainer Michael McCarthy and Ammerman Racing. But I think, seeing this trip again, he's been able to get really good trips from Juan Hernandez and has set off the pace and is just, had a target each and every time, or at least several targets that he's able to wear down on the stretch.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Keeps getting really good trips in his races, and we'll see if that's going to work out for him here in a bigger field against probably some better horses. I still think you have to like the way that he finishes in his races. Again, every one of them, he's just powering away from those fields at the end. I don't really know how good he is, but I certainly wouldn't knock anybody for wanting to take a shot with him here.
You mentioned obviously staying in California for all three starts. Toughest waters he's been in terms of quality at grade 3, and going to have to face some other horses. Now, a horse that's coming off a grade 1 win with an 80 buyer speed figure is the number 14 Parsons Run, who will take a look at the win in the grade 1 summer stakes up at Woodbine. I thought this was a huge performance from him, and obviously, look forward to his next start. But in this spot, he's going to draw post 14, which I think could compromise him in some regard. But I still thought this replay was worth showing.
Yeah, you're 100% right. He ran really well in here. This horse is another one who's got really good overall form. Boy, he did not do well at the post position draw here, getting hung way outside here. So we'll see how much it works against him. I think you got to be impressed with what he's done so far, though.
Yeah, certainly. And as I mentioned, I want to point out the buyer. I mean, we're talking about some of the better buyers in the field. I know an 87 is the buyer par, but to see the way he was able to win a great one, excuse me, got so excited there in the summer. I thought it was a really big performance. So those are the 5 races individually. Now it's the hot seat, Mike. We got to take a look at our tickets. We'll start with my ticket first in terms of structure. And I think we agree on a lot of the same horses here in terms of who we're going to use in each of these legs. For me, I guess the main things to point out, I thought that race 7 was worth spreading in. That's kind of one of the key races. I probably could have gone deeper, but just trying to think of where I thought value would be are the other races that I chose. And, out of the local horses, I really liked the 3 in there. I thought the performance that we saw, even from off the pace last time out at Keeneland, was good. You can see I did go kind of skinny and light, and the races before that in the 6th and the 8th. And I think the big thing is Muth looks really tough. I mentioned I like Timberlake. I like what we saw last time out. And I'm just thinking that, I couldn't use both of Bob's horses. I agree with you. I think having a 2-turn race was key. And so he's a horse that I couldn't single, but I do have strong opinions on Muth. And I do think he's probably one of the main top 2 horses in that field. But for me, just a $54 ticket. You can see 3x2 by 3x2 by 3 for my play. 50-cent minimums in this wager on Friday. And Mike, I'm excited to see your ticket. I think you went a little heavier, but rightfully so.
Yeah, I went a little deeper here. I will just point out, as far as this ticket goes, in the opening leg, the juvenile turf sprint, I do have 4 in there. The 13, who I threw in there, is the first also eligible Hedwig. I just wanted to include him because, and it's probably very unlikely that he gets in. I just wanted to include him because if for some reason he does draw into this race, he's a horse that I want to bet straight up at a big price, and I certainly want to use in the pick 5. I just think that's a horse who's 2 starts so far are really, really good, and he's going to be a price in here. I just don't think he's going to get in. He's on the ticket. If he doesn't get to run, it'll knock the ticket cost down to about $80. But so I have him in there. I just wanted to point that out. I guess the big takeaway here from this ticket is the second leg, the juvenile fillies. There is no number 7. I don't have Tamara in there. She's 4 to 5 on the morning line. She is the most likely winner of the race. But it's not like, this is a ticket where I have tons of prices floating around in here, Ashley. So, I wanted to try to beat at least one of the favorites in here. She's going to be the biggest one of all. And I just thought there were some other horses of interest in that race who could maybe get the job done. And obviously, if you can beat a horse like her in a pick 5, it could just really blow up, your ticket in a pretty big way. So I left her out. We'll see how quickly I get knocked out of this pick 5. It could be really early and leg number 2. And then I just went, I also sort of went skinny in the juvenile 2-turn dirt race. I really do like Locked in that race. So I'll lean on him. I threw the other Baffert in, Prince of Monaco, just because he's fast enough to win. I think he will get the distance, and he got a great post in here. So maybe he just falls into a really good trip.
Yeah, you've pointed it out. I mean, I think we have a similar idea, right? In a race like that, I can't take both of Bob's horses. I think they're both be short prices. You have to make a case for one of them or the other. And, you probably will get the better price. And I also agree with the Tamara take. I think when you start to look at the 2 days of racing, you see horses like Tamara, Cody's Wish. You either are singling or you're going against them. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. It's in terms of ticket structure, and it's in terms of hopefully what your potential payout could be. So $54 ticket for me, $108 ticket for Mike if his horse draws in the first race, which it's interesting that you point that horse out. I'm gonna have to give him a little bit of a look. I know he's come off of 2 nice performances back to back, I think second last time out, but that is how we see the pick 5 sequence that begins with race number 5 this Friday at Santa Anita Park on Future Stars Friday.